once we started moving out west, people got away from the long rifle and started going more into something like this. Why?
Yeah, what happened here is that you can imagine the frontier leading up to when Washington around 1776 was doing what we were describing earlier. The frontier then, the forest that we were moving around in, was a totally different forest than we have now. You know, the American chestnut was the dominant species of the woods here, and so you wouldn't have as much undergrowth in most of the parts that these guys were running around with these rifles in. It would be a big tree here, and then several yards over here, another big tree, and not a whole lot of undergrowth. But when they got out west, going into the Rockies, what they started running into is a lot of lower bramble, bushy type vegetation, and this thing just kept getting hung up, and it just wasn't a suitable firearm.
Just didn't carry well.
Yeah, I mean, it just kept running into stuff. So they built, you know, that's where the Hawken brothers got famous, building what's commonly referred to as a half stock. You know, the wood on this particular firearm here goes from the butt all the way to the muzzle, all the way to the end of it. On this one, it goes literally about halfway. And so a lot of people just lovingly refer to this as a half stock. And this is a more maneuverable rifle from horseback, a much more maneuverable rifle in low, bushy, brushy type vegetation.
Same caliber?
Well, that was...
What do you mean by caliber? You said that word 2 or 3 times. So explain to us what is a caliber of a rifle.
Caliber is the size of the bullet. So if you have a 50 caliber rifle, you're looking at 0.5 inches there, 0.50. If it's a 58, which this is a 58, which we need to get into that and discuss the difference between why this is so big, is that you're looking at a much bigger lead ball. Now, what they ran into when they started getting out into that part of the world out west, they started running into really big critters out there, you know, grizzly bears. We had elk in Kentucky then, but they had much larger animals out there in the Rockies that they had to deal with. And so they started carrying bigger rounds, bigger lead charges, and they were shooting them at shorter distances than they were here in the frontier of Kentucky.
Yeah, they have animals that fight back.
Yeah, man. You shoot again, the Kentucky long rifle is typically like a 45 caliber.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And you shoot a grizzly bear in the Rockies with a 45 caliber, then that pisses him off. It doesn't do anything to stop him. So they got a bigger lead ball, more charge there as they went out west.
All right, so you said this was a 58.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, the thing that is different for this rifle than your typical person that gets a Kentucky long rifle is I wanted a firearm that I can utilize in for different wild game. I'm a big fan of hunting. I wanted to be able to shoot deer, I wanted to be able to shoot turkey, and if I wanted to, I wanted to be able to shoot a squirrel. Okay. And so this is what's referred to as a smooth bore, meaning there is no rifling inside the barrel, which makes it a rifle that's probably only going to be accurate maybe out to 50 yards at best. But for my style of hunting, which I'm a tracker, I'm a hunter, I don't shoot, most of the deer I kill are at 10 and 15 yards from me. I mean, I don't hardly ever shoot farther than that anymore. And at the farthest that I'm ever going to shoot at a deer again probably is at 30-yard range. Okay. I just know how to hunt.
Which this will be plenty accurate out to that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that is when I put a lead ball in it. But a smooth bore, because it doesn't have the rifling in it, I can also use it as a shotgun. Heck, I could put gravel in this thing if I wanted to and shoot it because it's a smooth bore. If it has rifling in it, it creates that rotation that improves the trajectory of the lead. Then if I shoot gravel in it or shoot shot, then it tears and breaks down that rifling and it's not accurate anymore. This weapon's not like that. This weapon can be utilized for shotgun or for, a lead ball.
And again, that's just your personal preference.
Definitely personal preference.
You can build this with rifling.
Yeah, absolutely. Kibler's got kits that do both. If I'm fortunate enough to be able to get the funds together, I'll probably build, a Kentucky long rifle, literally a rifle that has rifling and cannot be utilized as a shotgun. I grew up using a literal shotgun, no rifle at all. I used a 10-gauge double-barrel shotgun to do most of my hunting, muzzleloading, squirrel hunting, grouse hunting, even dove hunting with that thing growing up. And so that was one of the things that I've never, besides the one that I was gifted by my parents when I graduated high school, I've never had a more traditional looking rifle that was mine, and that's part of what I did here.
Now, one time you told me you used your dad's rifle to squirrel hunt. Is that right?
Yeah.
What caliber was it?
Dad has two rifles. He's got one that was built by Herschel House, which is a Kentucky long rifle, 45 caliber. And he's got another squirrel rifle that's a 40 caliber that his brother made, my uncle.
Okay.
And so that rifle is probably best. I mean, Dad's killed deer with that 40 cal, but my dad kills deer just like I do. We shoot them in the eyeball or put a round in the ear. That's how we kill deer.
Okay.
So when we shoot them, they're dead. And you don't have to have a significantly large rifle to do that. I'm actually, quite frankly, a little bit concerned about utilizing this one in that manner because there's a good chance that it'll actually, destroy a lot of the neck meat if I shoot a deer in the head with this thing. It's a big round.
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to break the deer's neck. It's going to kill it immediately because it's going to blow half the head off. Not to be gross, but I'm a hunter and I don't like to wound animals. If I'm going to kill something, I want to kill it dead. And so that's a concern for this for sure.
So your dad's 40 caliber squirrel gun, is it the same type of barrel as this?
Yeah, similar. It is in a metal barrel, but this barrel is what's referred to as, you can see this right here, guys and gals, and we'll get some close-up shots too, but this is what's referred to as a swamp barrel, meaning it's a lot wider here than it is on the muzzle end of the rifle or the gun. And so my dad's like 40 caliber squirrel rifle, and I can't remember exactly, I don't think it's that wide at all down there at the base.
Okay.
And the reason is that this takes such a powder charge and shoots a big hunk of lead out of it, it probably needs to be a little bit bigger than your typical rifle. So think about it as far as working the stock. This is one of the things I had to admit to myself, I just don't think I could do. The barrel channel of that stock has to start out wide and get thinner all the way to here. I mean, and it's a slow grade all the way. It's not like it comes off and stops and then goes straight. It's an angle all the way from the breech all the way to the muzzle. And that would be tough for me as a craftsman. I'm not real good at that, so.
It'd be tough. What if you inlaid the barrel and your stock didn't have a good fit, solid fit to it, proper fit to it? What would happen?
I don't know. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I did this, is to make sure I didn't make that mistake, and I didn't make that mistake.
Yeah.
But with that said, again, this is a kit gun, so it came mostly done. Matter of fact, it came such that I had to do a lot of sanding on it. And so when I set the barrel in there the first time, it didn't even come close to, well, it came close, don't get me wrong. It's mostly done. But I definitely had to do sanding, particularly I had to do with some chisel work right here. And I had to do a lot of sanding basically from here on down so that it would fit comfortably and not have gaps. Okay. One thing that's, we'll get into in the operation of it, and we haven't talked about this yet, Trace, but the lock sits in here next to the barrel, but these are two independent pieces of one another. And so when you put priming powder in here to utilize it, you don't want that priming powder to get down inside the side of the barrel and down inside that stock because it'll blow it up. And so you want that fit right there to be extremely tight. And this is one of the pieces that piece right there, I took an incredible amount of time on when I was filing it. Because there's a touch hole in there that starts off as a big hole, and I screwed that piece in there that you can see, and we'll get close-ups of this for those of you who are looking at it. That piece screws in there, and then you have to hacksaw it off and then file all that down. Okay?
Oh, wow.
That's literally threaded in there. And that's actually a stainless piece. I actually paid a different price to get that stainless piece. I wanted that to be stainless. But the key is that if you've got the barrel and you've got the lock, and there's that gap there, then as you put priming powder in there, it falls down inside, and if that ignites, then you're catching the inside of the cutout, the wood, on fire. That's not cool. So as far as craftsmanship, I spent as much time doing about 2 inches on that barrel as I did the rest of the barrel, because I wanted that to be perfect.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you start and work your way through and just talk about the pieces and parts.
Okay.
How about that?
Sounds good. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces and parts right here, so we'll start down here at the muzzle. Basically what you have, again, Tracy brought this up, this is a swamp barrel. Again, the barrel is the piece that runs from right here to right here. Somewhere in the neighborhood for a long rifle is about 40 to 44 inches typically. So this one being swamp, meaning it's wider here at the breech than it is here at the muzzle. What you have here is a brass nose cap that is pinned in, that I had to pin it and then file all the pieces down so everything would fit there pretty well. The brass pins that you see on this side of it, when I say pins, these are basically sleeves. This holds the ramrod. The piece right here, this lighter wood color, is the ramrod, and it slides down through these sleeves and actually goes into the stock down here. That's what you utilize to put the charge. You pour the powder down into the barrel, but when you put the lead down there, it doesn't fall down in there. You have to tamp it down in there. Has a brass sight on the front. These are dovetailed front and back sights, and the dovetail means that this will slide in and out, and as you're building it, and then you basically tamp this down so it holds fast. What you want to do when we sight this in, we might talk about this later, but you want to get this where it works for my eye because it's my rifle, and then we want to secure them, make sure they don't move at that point. The stock, in this particular case, you might see has a unique patterning to it. It's what a lot of people call curly maple. Jim Kibler, who I bought this from, was calling this fancy maple. I've heard people call it tiger maple before too. So the piece that we have right here is what's referred to as the lock, and this is a flintlock. This whole apparatus right here that has the spring, this is the frizzen, this is the powder pan, this is the actual hammer, and this piece right here is a piece of flint. It has a screw on top that you can take this loose and tight, put the flint in there, held in place with a piece of leather. So what happens is you put priming powder down in the pan, put the frizzen down, pull it, it's on half cock right now, pull it to full cock, and when you fire it, it throws sparks which lights the priming powder, and that priming powder then goes inside the barrel and lights the charge that's actually inside the barrel. Going past that, what we have is brass furniture. The pieces and parts that make up the firearm are called furniture. Like this trigger guard here is brass, and then the butt plate itself on the end is brass. The plate on the side is brass as well. And so this is all brass furniture. This piece right here is kind of unique. If you've never seen one of these, this is a patch box. And what you have here is an area, and this is the coloration of the firearm when I got it. As you can see down here, that's rather white. And you can see that side, that's what the whole stock looked like when I first got it. And so what you have here is a place that you can put some lead balls, you can put some patches, that's why it's called a patch box, maybe some Skittles or something like that down in there. Whatever, it's my rifle, so I can put in there what I want.
As many Skittles in there as you want. Few questions.
Yeah.
One, this is different than this.
Right. As far as the box, you mean?
Yeah, as far as the box. Is this something that we would see on long rifles, or are they
Yeah.
all slide in?
Actually,
like
my
this?
dad's Kentucky long rifle that was built by Herschel House has basically what looks like a little gate right here. And so it clips very similarly to this one. And then when you click it, it has basically a door that comes up.
Okay.
And then it goes back down instead of sliding in at all.
So there's a lot of variations.
Oh yeah,
right?
it would probably, Tracy, come up to be a thing that was, the maker. What did he like? Sometimes they inlay different, particularly on this side of the stock, they would inlay a lot of times in this area, maybe their family seal or something that was important to a military unit or something of that nature. They would have some of that design on top where your hand went to. And one thing, go ahead.
Because again, they were keeping it for life.
Yeah, absolutely. It was theirs. So one thing I did mention, and you will not be able to see this, maybe even when we get a close up, but all the way down through here, there's these little tiny holes. That's what's actually holding the barrel onto the stock. Those are little tiny pieces of piano wire. Piano wire because it's really stout and holds its form and is not malleable at all. So it's a little tiny, I can't even remember what size that is, but there's, I think, 4 that hold the barrel on, and there's other ones that hold each of these brass sleeves on. Same thing as holding like you'll notice that this trigger guard right here, there is no screw here at all. That's all held on with pins that are put all the way through the stock. So breaking it down is what I'm trying to say. To break and take this barrel off and clean it if I wanted to, maybe underneath, make sure there's no rust, that's going to take a while.
Take a while.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed is you got one trigger here, and you've got 2 triggers here.
Yeah, this is pretty typical of a smooth bore. Most long rifles like this would have a trigger set like this, and this is what's referred to as set trigger. So you'd have one trigger that gets everything ready inside the lock, then you cock it ready till it's ready to go, and then you actually pull the trigger that makes it fire. And so, for example, if I put this on half cock without doing the set trigger, nothing's going to happen. If I put it on full cock, sometimes it goes and sometimes it doesn't. So what this is doing here is setting to where this works optimally, the way it's designed to work. And that was just a design feature. But for a shotgun, the thought is with a rifle, you'll have more time to set up and get on target. With a shotgun, you might be birding with it. A grouse comes off the ground, or back in England, a pheasant came off the ground, and you got to get up on it, so one trigger.
Okay. Would that turn it into kind of what we call now a hair trigger?
That is, you can make a hair trigger with this one too. Okay. That's all in the mechanism inside the lock.
The other thing I noticed is we got flint here, but we don't have flint there.
Yeah, this is a percussion rifle here. Nice observation. Basically, the way you've got to do something that is the initial priming charge to a firearm. So when you put a cartridge like a shotgun or a regular modern rifle, there's a primer at the end of the cartridge that a firing pin hits it, shoots a spark out from the shell itself, which ignites the powder inside the cartridge. Well, you build all that inside the gun here. And so the spark that causes it here is the flintlock. What happened here is a percussion cap. So this is what's referred to as a nipple right here. And you put a little cap right on top of that nipple. And when this fires and comes down, it hits that cap. This is more modern than this formation. And what the precursor to this is what's called the matchlock, which was basically a piece of rope or cordage that you light, and you basically walk around with that thing lit. And then it comes down and hits powder in the priming pan. Yeah. That often went off unexpectedly. And so this made it a little bit safer, and then this made it a little bit safer, and now we're even more safe.
What year did the Hawkins come out? Do you remember?
I don't know. It would have been in the 1800s.
Early 1800s.
Mm-hmm. Okay. When we were going into the West, out west.
Another observation is, if I had powder here ready to fire, I can't just carry this through the woods.
No.
Right?
No.
Had to be loaded and fired on scene.
No. Okay. You actually put priming powder in here and you close this down and it stays like that.
It holds it.
Mm-hmm. It holds it right in place. The problem with that, and I'm glad you asked this, is that the problem with this is really easy to get wet.
Okay.
And so it's one of those things that either one of two things happened. If you're traveling, there was basically a shroud that would be over this, made typically of leather, that would shed the rain. And then for me, the way I've done it for years is when I'm hunting, I always hunt like this.
Protected.
And so I've always got that right in my armpit, so that if rain hits anything, it's hitting me. And then when the deer comes, then I'm up and I'm ready to do what I need to do. But you've got to do something to keep that covered, because if that gets damp, it's not going to fire.
What else? So talk to us about the sight. If you mentioned earlier, we were talking before we started the video, that you basically all you have to do is sight it in now.
Right.
So what's your process of sighting something like this in? If I go to the range right now with my rifle, I've got screws. I move them left, right, up, down. I can move my back sight. I can move my front sight.
Right. You've got to, number one, anytime you use a firearm, you got to pull it up to your shoulder and put your head down on it the same way every time. And that's a modern rifle or an older rifle like this. But especially so with a rifle like this, because the sights here, once I get it sighted in, and I'll briefly talk about that in a second, it's done. Because the way I'm going to sight this in is I'm going to get this one locked in. If I need to move for windage, then I can move this one and then secure it where I need it to be. And that's all based upon how I pull the rifle up and get on sight on, how I lay my head on it and everything. And then what I want to do is I want to get my elevation right. And in modern firearms, we screws it lower and raise the reticle or the sight or what have you. But on this one, you basically use a file. So it's made bigger than it's...
You better get it right then.
You have to. It's bigger than you need it to be. And then you file it down to where you need it to be for you, and then you're done.
So you got it sighted in for you. I couldn't pick up your rifle and fire it.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
No, I mean you would have to start getting your eye on it. I mean, if you had it long enough, yeah, you would figure out, okay, I've got to have that sight.
Thin bead,
Yeah,
full bead, and all
exactly.
that kind of stuff.
But it's definitely going to be up when I pull it up. Then I put it like the way that I want to sight it.
Every time. But if you pass this out, say on to your son Zane, he could take the front sight off because it's not permanent.
Right.
Redovetail, put another one, and then start the whole process
Yeah,
again.
this-
and make it right.
This little
again.
piece, I just took it out.
Yeah.
That's the sight right there. I can take that in and out no problem. Zane or my daughter, if she wanted it, could do that too. And so we could take that out, and I don't have to do anything else with the rifle. They can make it to where they
Fit it right.
use.
Being able to pass it on, they still be
Yeah.
fully functional for the next generation to come.